Hello, MCU fans. Today is going to be my Deadpool and Wolverine breakdown and review, and there will be lots of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, you do not want to watch this video. So we're going to be talking about things like my favorite Easter eggs, favorite cameos, but also some of the bigger concepts they dropped on us in this movie, such as anchor beings, time rippers. Oh my word, so much impact to the MCU as a whole and to the multiverse. So there is lots to talk about. So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a July contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. All right, so I always like to know, when does a movie happen in the timeline? And they tell us that right up front. So we start, like many of the Deadpool movies, kind of in the middle of the movie, and then Deadpool explains, well, we got to rewind a bit so I can give you some context. But so where we start the movie is, well, in 2029. So Deadpool jumps forward in time. Yeah, the X-Men timelines are crazy. He jumps forward in time because he wants to verify that Logan is indeed dead, which is kind of funny because in Deadpool 2, he joked about Logan being dead. But we're going to see in this movie he has a little extra incentive to absolutely make sure Logan is dead. By the way, Deadpool 2 happens in 2018, and we're going to see that we go back to 2018 in his universe. But before we go to his universe, we're going to first go to the MCU. Oh my word. Yes, this is indeed Wade talking to Happy Hogan in Avengers headquarters. What on earth, right? How is this happening? Well, first of all, when is this happening? And they give us an exact date, which is awesome, March 14th of 2018. I mean, it's rare we even get a year, let alone a month. They're even giving us the day. So why are they doing that? Well, because we need to know when this thing is happening, because Infinity War, well, that's right around the corner. Luckily, we learned from the timeline book, that's not until May of 2018. So I think that's why they were very specific to tell us this is 2 months before all hell breaks loose with Infinity War. Okay, so we have Wade visiting the MCU. And interestingly, we get the return of the Earth 616 labeling. Now, why do I say the return of this? Well, you might remember way back in Loki Season 1, where the whole multiverse saga really started, they labeled Loki's video reel Earth 616, which I think is kind of funny because they're literally showing this to an Asgardian who like lives on Asgard, not Earth. But for whatever reason, the TVA loves to call them Earth and then a number, 616. And by the way, they kept this same 616 labeling all the way through Season 1 and Season 2. Whenever you had a timeline segment, notice it was 616 dot blah, blah, blah. And whenever you had a timeline branch, it was 616 dot blah, 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 dot blah, blah, blah. So they were very consistent on this numbering. And by the way, that's just one of the many reasons I think Loki's tree that we see at the end of Season 2 is just 616 and its branches, because why would they stop using the 616 numbering and, for example, label a branch 838? It just doesn't make sense to me. But we're going to talk a lot more about Loki's tree and where I think the X-Men universe is in relation to that tree. So, okay, then we jump 6 years later. So Deadpool 2 was in 2018, right? And now we jump to, they tell us specifically, 6 years later. And they tell us we're on Earth 10,005. That's awesome. That's the first time we've been given an official Earth designation, at least in the movies. I mean, fans have given it designations for years. But in the movies, officially now we know that the X-Men universe is 10,005. And I think similar to how they call it Earth 616, and then all the branches have, the 616 dot blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be the same thing here. Earth 10,005 is every single branch off of 10,005 also included in one big structure. I hope that makes sense. So let's talk then about when this happens in the timeline. Okay, well, we know that Deadpool 2 is in 2018, or at least that's what most people say. Honestly speaking, they don't give us a year in that movie. So most people, myself included, go with when the movie came out. And then they tell us he jumped 6 years after that. So Deadpool and Wolverine is happening in 2024. So at least this little teeny part of the X-Men timeline, well, that makes sense, right? But the rest of it, oh my. So we are learning for certain that things like X-Men Origins Wolverine, The Wolverine, and in particular Logan, those are all in 10,005, the 10,005 universe, which is the same overall timeline as Deadpool and Wolverine, because they're showing us that Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, and Deadpool 3, which is Deadpool and Wolverine, are tied to Logan. But of course, that's where this just gets so weird because Logan doesn't happen until 2029. So what is going on then? That means Logan hasn't died yet in 2024, right? I mean, theoretically, after Days of Future Past, this is our Logan. This is Wolverine. He's still alive, as are all the different X-Men. So in the movie, when this little kid goes, oh, look, that's Wolverine. Of course, he's looking at the one from the movie. But does he know it's Wolverine because of this one? In fact, do we now have two Wolverines? In fact, you could argue, do we have two X-23s? Because we're going to see at the end of the movie that X-23 from Logan also is brought to this timeline. Oh, makes my head hurt. It really makes my head hurt. I mean, this all got started because Deadpool 2 joked about something that happened later in the timeline, and now they're kind of stuck with it. But hey, you know what? The X-Men timelines are never going to make complete sense. We just have to roll with them. But I would really be interested in your thoughts. Do you think there are now two Wolverines and two X-23s? By the way, X-23 would only be about 1 year old. But still, I think there's two Wolverines. Craziness. All right. A bigger question, though, is how did Deadpool even get here? How did he get to 616? And why did he not create an incursion? I mean, theoretically, this is a totally different universe. It should have created an incursion. It's all crazy. But it's especially crazy because they make it seem like it was Cable's device that let him go there. But we see specifically in Deadpool 2 that the device only reverses time. Negasonic is saying, how can something so small generate enough energy to reverse time? And of course, then here we see the monitor, she's working on it, and then she hands it over ultimately to Deadpool, who starts playing around with it. Cable's device was never about traveling to different timelines, let alone different universes. But obviously, Deadpool used it to do, well, lots of things. He used it to bring Vanessa back from the dead, which is kind of funny. If you think about it, he goes back in time to a point prior to Cable even arriving. So he's using Cable's device in Deadpool 2 to go back in time before Cable even showed up. That seems like that shouldn't work. But hey, it's okay. We wanted Vanessa to come back. We'll let that slide. Then he goes and saves everybody from X-Force, remember, especially Peter. Gotta save Peter, who does show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. Then he goes to a different timeline now to kill crappy Deadpool. And of course, he goes and kills Ryan Reynolds before he's able to be in Green Lantern. So obviously, a lot of this is just meant to be crazy. I mean, realistically speaking, these things shouldn't be able to happen. So with Deadpool, you kind of just got to roll with it. And I don't think they're trying to say, metaphysically speaking, he was able to realistically go and kill the actor Ryan Reynolds. It's a joke. It's just meant to be funny, some of this stuff. But unfortunately, this scene has to happen because it's a motivating scene for the entire movie. His being turned down from being an Avenger, leads to much of what he does throughout the entire movie. So I'm not saying this scene didn't happen. I'm just saying we can't take seriously the metaphysics behind how it happened. We have to just let that slide. I mean, think about the fact that She-Hulk managed to jump out of the Disney Plus interface and have a conversation with Kevin. The characters that do fourth wall breaks do some pretty insane things. So my simple point is this. I don't think Cable's device was really able to do what Deadpool did with it, but we're not supposed to look at it from a metaphysics standpoint. We're supposed to just have fun with it and go, okay, it just happened, and let's not think too much about it. So then Wade is captured by the TVA and brought to Mr. Paradox, who says, I brought you here, Mr. Wilson, to tell you that you are special. In fact, you've been chosen for a higher purpose, a purpose unclear even to me. Now, that's interesting. That means someone higher up than Mr. Paradox has basically said, you have to make this offer to Wade. Wade can refuse it, which he will, basically, but you have to make the offer. So, but he doesn't know why. So that's very interesting. But I think that explains why he didn't just immediately prune Wade. Because I've had a lot of people wonder, why didn't he just send him to the void and be done with it? I think Mr. Paradox had to make this offer, which of course Wade was allowed to turn down. So then he further explains, your purpose could save the entire sacred timeline from a possibly grisly fate sometime in the future, which may very well need to be avenged. So he's basically going after Wade's ego, because remember, Wade had earlier tried to join the Avengers in that scene with Happy Hogan, and now he's being given a chance to go. It's very interesting, though, they're calling it the sacred timeline, because after Loki Season 2, and this movie is most definitely after Loki Season 2, there really wasn't a sacred timeline per se. Everything had value. Every branch had meaning. So I think that's interesting, but it may well be Mr. Paradox's bias towards the timeline, and also, of course, Wade's, because Wade really wants to go here. So then up on the screen, he sees Thor over his dead body and gets a little nervous, obviously. But Mr. Paradox is like, no, let's not get ahead of ourselves. That happens in the distant future. Eyes on me, here, eyes on me. But this does seem to imply that maybe Deadpool is going to die during Secret Wars, or who knows. Or again, this could be, because you just don't know with Deadpool, another meta joke that isn't really going to happen. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think Deadpool is really going to die at some point, or is this just to be funny? But more important, Mr. Paradox explains, I brought you here for an opportunity you sought years ago when he talked to Happy Hogan, obviously, but which you were not ready for. We believe you are now ready for a chance to leave your timeline, that's interesting, and join the greatest universe of all. I'm about to give you the thing you've always wanted. So we have seen already that when Marvel uses, timeline, universe, world, reality, multiverse, you can't really trust the wording, but still, this is interesting. Leaving his timeline and going to a different universe. I just think it's one more indication that the Fox universe is a totally separate entity from the 616 universe. So I'm just looking at all the little clues they give us and kind of pointing them out as we go. But then, now he learns the bad news. There's no going back to his universe, and he can't even bring his friends along, because this is your universe, Mr. Wilson. This is what happens when a universe loses their anchor being. There's the words, right? Anchor being. See how it decays from the inside? This is how a reality dies. An anchor being is an entity of such vital importance that when they die, their whole world slowly withers out of existence. All right, I'm going to be honest up front. I don't like the concept of anchor being. It doesn't make sense to me that one person dying would make an entire universe and all its timelines be wiped out. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. But let me throw out something. It is possible, because this is a Deadpool movie, you got to keep that in mind with everything in the movie, that this is all just a clever meta reference. What do I mean by that? Well, I think Mr. Paradox is a stand-in for movie executives. And in the real world, obviously, when an actor either retires or passes away, or just doesn't want to do the role anymore, sometimes they continue a universe going on and on and on and on, and you get flop after flop after flop. So you just need to accept that we need to old yeller it, as they said in the movie. So in a way, he is like a movie mogul that just is like, let's just kill it. It's done. Your universe is over. We want you, but your universe is done. So let me know your thoughts on this idea. Do you think anchor being actually has real, metaphysics meaning, like this is going to keep coming up later in the MCU? Or do you think this is more a commentary on how studios handle their franchises? Well, let's keep looking, though, because they sure do keep talking about it. Mr. Paradox then says, your anchor being died in an act of self-sacrifice so epic that it sent shivers down the timeline. I'm referring, of course, to Logan. So what I think he means by shivers down the timeline is this happened in 2029, but basically it's rippling, it's shivering, if you will, throughout all of the universe, and it's just going to wipe everything out. So when Hugh Jackman basically retired from the role, that meant the end of the Fox universe. And then Wade says, well, can't you stop it? And he's like, no, we're not doing it. We can't stop it. And in most cases, it will last, 1,000 years. So I think that's also kind of weird. This idea of, okay, your anchor being is gone, but the universe is going to hang around for 1,000 years. I'm wondering if that's, metaphorical for, it feels like 1,000 years sometimes for how long they keep a franchise going when their main star is gone. Again, it's just so hard to tell if this is an allegory or if they really mean this is what's happening. So for the minute, let's go see what Feige has to say about it. You can check out this video if you want, and if you want to watch the whole thing, it's a Fandango interview, and around the 5-minute to 7-minute mark is the interview with Feige. And so they ask him about anchor beings. So Feige says, I love that you picked up on that term. A few people have asked me about that, and I think maybe it's just the way Sean and Paradox have delivered that, but I think it really resonates with people, this notion of an anchor being for a universe who is the anchor being in one's world, and in this movie, of course, it's Wolverine. So when I read it to you like that, it sounds, well, pretty definitive, right? But if you watch the video, and I really want you to watch it to get your impression of it, he kind of sounds to me like he's going, oh crap, you're taking this literally, aren't you? Oh crap, what are we going to do? Like, in other words, they just wrote this to be funny and now everybody's hanging on to it. So I don't know. Watch it and tell me what you think. But I will say this for sure. He then continues and seems to make it a real thing because he talks about Endgame and says, we were working on Infinity War and Endgame where I was trying to stick the landing with sending off our own anchor being. So now Tony Stark is the anchor being of the MCU? Does that mean the MCU is dying? I mean, was Feige legit saying that the MCU died after Endgame? I don't know. I am so curious to see if the term anchor being ever gets uttered again outside of Deadpool and Wolverine. So it's either this very important concept going forward, or it was just meant as a joke in this movie and everybody latched onto it like we do as fans. Let me know your thoughts. Is it real or is it a joke? All right. Regardless, the anchor being gone is causing problems. So this is really important. Mr. Paradox says, I have been tasked with overseeing the end of your universe, and regardless of what the pencil pushers upstairs would prefer, I will not waste my time watching it die slowly of natural causes. We used to just prune these things. Simple, elegant, efficient. But I'm told the TVA doesn't like to do that anymore. Well, I do. And no matter what my so-called superiors say, the multiverse does not need a babysitter. So this clearly places it after Loki season 2, because they're no longer pruning. And in fact, in this case, even a universe that is dying, they're not allowed to do anything about it. They have to just let it die. So they sure are treating anchor, being like it means something. If this is just a fun little meta joke, it's being carried out pretty far. But nonetheless, he wants to speed things up. So he said, we need a mercy killer. And in this instance, I am the mercy killer. That is a time ripper, an accelerant. Once completed, it will allow me to destroy the space-time matrix of your universe. I don't want to work for the TVA. I want to be the TVA. And the first step involves showing this organization how much more efficient it can become. To wit, I will be giving your universe a swift and compassionate end. So yeah, he's very clear that the time ripper is going to wipe out the entire universe, all the timelines, everything involved with 10,005, Earth 10,005. So we definitely saw this type of situation, this spaghettification in the Loki series, right? Here's Mobius spaghettifying, and then here's the whole area around Loki spaghettifying. But I do think what the Time Ripper is a very efficient, in fact, more efficient method than bombing. Remember when Dox did the bombing and had to go to each timeline and drop a bomb in each one? And it was next to impossible to win because new next events kept popping up, more branches, and now you got to go bomb those. The Time Ripper lets you wipe them all out. Every single thing gone. But I want to throw something out. Is the Time Ripper destroying a branch on a tree, or is it destroying an entire tree? Because if we look at the image, I've blown this up. I can't wait until it's on Disney Plus and we can get good visuals. But I've blown up the timeline that Paradox is showing Wade. That does not look to me like a branch off Loki's tree. That looks like a universe and all its main timeline and all of its branches. So in other words, is a Time Ripper ripping a branch off of Loki's tree, 10,005, or is it a separate tree that represents all of 10,005 being completely thrown into the wood chipper, like the entire tree? Just my opinion, but the idea of a Time Ripper seems like something you would do to an entire tree, not just to one branch off a tree. But again, I'm trying to point out all the little things that might help us figure out where 10,005 is located in the greater multiverse. All right, so Deadpool has a different idea. Deadpool says, nope, I'm going to steal your TemPad and I'm going to go find a new anchor being to basically replace Logan. So we know he's dead, right? Because at the beginning of the movie, he went and found out, yep, the Logan from the Logan movie in 2029 is absolutely dead. So I need to find me a new one. So here's where we get some very, very funny Easter eggs and cool Easter eggs. I loved this one because we get to see, briefly see Wolverine fight the Hulk and a recreation of this incredibly cool cover. I've always loved that. In fact, there's been many covers that show this. Unfortunately, the battle is very, very short. We don't even know if that's Mark Ruffalo's Hulk or not. He basically slams Deadpool into a tree, and then that's all we see. But yeah, I'm hoping we eventually get a real Deadpool versus Wolverine fight, because this tease got me all the more excited for it. And then my other favorite variant, there were lots of cool ones. A short Deadpool that was comic book accurate and all kinds of crazy things. But I loved the Henry Cavill variant, basically, the Henry Cavill Logan. He would be such a good Wolverine. Such a good. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would you like to see him as Wolverine? Especially after this appearance, I would be all for it. And I love the fact that Deadpool jokes that we'll treat you better than the guys down the street treated you, basically ripping on DC and how they kind of hosed him as Superman. So anyway, very, very cool to see him trying all these different variants. But ultimately, the one he brings is this one, our main Wolverine for the movie. And I thought this line was interesting. Notice what Mr. Paradox says. You actually think you can replace an anchor being with this? So he didn't say you can't replace an anchor being at all. He just said with this, because that does leave the door open that an anchor being can be replaced, which I think is what we're going to see at the end of the movie. So anyway, that's very interesting. And then he says, this Wolverine let down his entire world. So we were all dying to know, what on earth did he do? What did he do to let everyone down? Well, they tell us, and honestly, it's not as interesting as I thought it might be, but it's still very sad. Basically, the story is as simple as he got drunk at a bar, wasted, and during that point in time, the humans, the haters of mutants, came and killed the X-Men. But he didn't just then come and kill those humans. He went on a rage and killed many, many more. So yeah, it is very sad. His story is heartbreaking. To lose the X-Men because he was just drinking too much, and then to kill, I'm assuming, hundreds and hundreds of people. But yeah, I guess I kind of thought it'd be something different, but I'm okay. I'm okay with it. I guess let me know your thoughts. Were you satisfied with that as his backstory? But the key is he feels like an utter failure, and of course he should. I mean, it was terrible. He lost everyone just for sitting in a bar. Okay, so this is really telling, this point here, because now Deadpool says, well, why don't we call your bosses? We'll get this all worked out. And there's silence. And then Deadpool says, you're off the grid. Your bosses don't even know what you sick people are doing down here. So that's when we find out for certain that Paradox is not operating under the purview of what B-15 and others want him to do. Because I remember one of the biggest reasons, you might know from my videos, I kept saying, man, I wonder if it's the same TVA or not. The biggest issue I had is, how are they going to explain why Paradox is pruning all this stuff when that's not what they do anymore? There's our answer. He's doing this without telling them. So that's why I wonder, well, how much of what he's telling Wade is even true? I mean, was he ever going to take him to the sacred timeline? Are anchor beings even a real thing? Or does he just want to wipe out 10,005? It makes it really hard when you have an unreliable narrator, but we'll talk more about what I think is true and not as we continue along. So, okay, they get pruned, obviously, and we get tons of good fights. Oh, my word. The fight choreography was so good through their multiple fights. And then we meet some incredible cameos. Chris Evans, oh, my word. What a fantastic cameo, right? I mean, he's Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four movies in the mid-2000s. I love it. And he serves a purpose, too. These cameos all served a purpose because he explains what's going on. He says, you're in the void. Think of it as purgatory. Reed, I love the name drop of Reed Richards, called it a metaphysical junkyard where anything useless goes before it gets annihilated forever. And it's where the TVA sends people who don't play nice with the rest of the multiverse. That is an interesting statement, because one of the things we're kind of left wondering at the end of the movie is, why were these guys pruned? Why did they prune him? Why did they prune some of the others we're going to get to in just a second? We don't really get an exact answer, and it would be kind of cool if we did, but it sounds like they crossed paths with the TVA and were viewed as a threat. So prune. And that's again why I do not think B-15 is aware of what some of these folks like Paradox are doing. But this is so funny. This is probably my favorite line in the movie, to be honest. He then is asked, well, what does the annihilating? And he explains Alioth, to which Deadpool responds, Alioth is in this thing? From Loki season 1, episode 5? Oh my gosh. As a geek, I admit it, as a nerd, as a super fan, I just lost it. Yes, there were some other jokes that were probably funnier, but this one just hit me, really hit me. That is just so hilarious. Because I would do the same thing. I would turn to somebody and go, remember, that's from Loki season 1, episode 5. Oh my gosh. Too funny. Too funny. Anyway, speaking of Eliath, what happened to this scene? Right? I mean, this was in the early trailers where the TV agent is saying, no, no, please, and then gets munched. So my guess is, notice how Deadpool is standing right there. In the movie, it seems they must have changed it because Deadpool and Wolverine got away before Eliath showed up. They blast out of the base. In fact, that was one of the biggest things I wondered is how do they get out of the base? Well, they just escaped. But yeah, I think they had to cut this scene, which is kind of a bummer. I thought it was really cool. But anyway, not in the movie. All right, so then Deadpool hilariously gets Johnny killed. So once they do finally arrive in front of Cassandra Nova, Deadpool explains all the things that that he said, the Human Torch said, that were offensive about Cassandra Nova, and gets him killed, right? Graphically, horribly killed. So that leads to the post-credit scene, which I'm going to go ahead and mention here because it just makes sense to cover it now. Because the whole movie, Deadpool's like, hey, he said all that stuff. I swear to you, he said all that stuff. So at the end of the movie, he goes and uses the TVA tech to play audio of Johnny saying all those horrible things, which is so funny to have Chris Evans be, I mean, in a 30-second monologue, some of the most offensive things to ever come out of his mouth. It's really, really funny. But I want your opinion on something. Did the monitor that Deadpool looked at to, see what Johnny was actually saying, didn't it remind you of Kevin? Because it had kind of the three camera lenses. I mean, are they maybe trying to say the TVA and Kevin are working together? That would be interesting. I don't think they're going to do that because I really think they're never going to bring up Kevin again. But I swear it looked like a Kevin device that was letting him see what Johnny said. So let me know your thoughts on that. But anyway, I mentioned some other heroes. Oh my word, these cameos were incredible. Channing Tatum had always wanted to play Gambit, so that was the joke. But his movie was canceled, so now finally he gets to play Gambit and did a pretty terrible job at it with the accent. To get Wesley Snipes back, oh my word! Remember, Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds were in Blade 3 together and notoriously got along terribly, really terribly. So they had some inside jokes around that. Jennifer Garner coming back as Elektra. Wow, that was incredible. And what a funny joke when Deadpool says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear about Daredevil," and she's like, "That's all right." That's a meta joke for the fact that Daredevil, of course, is played by Ben Affleck, she was married to him, and of course, then they got divorced. So she doesn't care that Daredevil died because, they're divorced. Too fun. And they get along really well. So that was a good joke. But of all of these, Daphne Keane, man, I was so happy to have Daphne Keane back. Unbelievable. We'll talk a little bit more about her in a second. But so these four explain there was a knock at the door, and the TVA sent us here. The TVA decided our universe was dying, same thing that they told Deadpool, and I never even got a chance to fight for it. People like us don't go quietly. The TVA knows that, so they took us out. So this raises an interesting question. Are they from 10,005? I mean, Daphne Keane, yes. Daphne Keane definitely is from the same universe as Deadpool because she's just from the future of the Logan storyline. But what about Gambit, Blade, and Elektra? I mean, it sounds like Paradox was doing the same thing to them that he did to Deadpool. But maybe they're from a different universe. I don't know. It probably doesn't matter too much, but we'll talk about it more at the end of the movie because I think that's where we may get a bigger hint. But yeah, I mentioned Daphne Keane and how cool it is to have her coming back as X-23. Look at that. Isn't that just so cool? There she is on the left in the Logan movie and on the right now in Deadpool and Wolverine. So very cool. All right. Anyway, now, eventually, they do get out of the void. And of course, what was one of the big questions, right, is what were these portals? We all went nuts when the first time we saw this portal. Like, who's using it? How is it working? How are they able to make a portal in the void, etc.? Well, they answer some of our questions. I mean, we definitely learned that Cassandra is the one that has the sling ring. So everybody that guessed Cassandra had it, you got it right. And she says an amateur magician rolled in here a while back. Well, I killed him, of course, but I found this little trinket on his lovely fingers. Okay, I really wanted more of an explanation than that. I'll be honest. I think they waffled a bit there because they didn't want to tell us anymore. You remember, here's a close-up of it, and it has the red and the green stones. I really wanted to know, how does an infinity stone, assuming those are the time and reality stones, how does that work in the void? I mean, it doesn't seem like any stone should work outside of their home universe. So do all stones work in the void? I don't know. I'm still going to go with a cool theory somebody suggested a while back on my videos, which is that it might be the M-Cron crystal. Because if you look at the M-Cron crystal, number one, it's an X-Men item. So that's awesome right there, right? So it is known as the nexus of all realities. It allows you to travel to other realities in the multiverse. Even a shard is enough, just a small shard. You don't have to have the whole crystal. It lets you travel through time and even go outside of space and time. I mean, that describes exactly what we saw in the movie. So since they didn't tell us what it is, my headcanon is it's a shard from the M-Cron crystal. But who knows? Maybe one day they'll tell us how on earth that thing worked, who put the Infinity Stones in there. I mean, maybe it was Doctor Strange's Time Stone and then the M-Cron crystal combined. That'd be cool. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on how you think that sling ring really worked and was able to take them out of the void. But sure enough, they're sent home because here they are back home. Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90. Love that joke. But we find out that Pyro has been double-crossing Cassandra all along. Oh, and by the way, this part wasn't in the movie either. This great line where he says, "I love this part." I think that was the same scene where the TVA guy got munched, so that's probably why they had to cut it. But, this is such a bummer. It was such a good line. But anyway, turns out that he was really working with Paradox and trying to set Cassandra up. So he gets killed. Bye-bye, Pyro. And you might remember him, obviously, from The Last Stand, X-Men Last Stand. You can see how he's aged over time. Really cool. But now we know what's happening here. I was dying to know what on earth is the context behind this scene. Well, they're back in their home world, right? Because Cassandra had already sent them back. But now Cassandra blasts them through this wall, and sure enough, we now know who these two figures are. Who would have thought it was Cassandra, which that was my guess, and Mr. Paradox? What? That blob is Mr. Paradox? Well, that just shows how it's really hard to figure out a grainy figure. But yeah, that's actually Mr. Paradox because, like I mentioned, he was working with Pyro and Cassandra found out. And so now she grabs him, she shoves Deadpool and Wolverine away, and now she says, "Hey, you broke our deal." She explains, "I was happy in the void. You sent your trash to me. Eliath and I cleaned it up. Everyone was happy. And you had to go and play on my side of the fence. So now the fence must come down. I'm going to use your little time ripper, and I'm going to destroy this universe and the next and the next and the next until all that's left is the void and I get to play God." Yikes. Do not ever cross Cassandra Nova. She don't take it very well. So she's going to use that time ripper to basically destroy every single reality. Yikes. And she sends the Deadpool Corps to fight Deadpool and Wolverine. So I didn't guess that by any means. I was not sure where these people were coming from or why they were coming. But of course, now we know that Cassandra used her sling ring to bring them in. And we learn that this is Blake Lively under that mask. We don't see her face, but in the credits, you learn it's her. Nathan Fillion played Headpool. That's awesome. And Matthew McConaughey, the man, plays Cowboy Pool, or whatever his official name is. But yeah, that was fun. I mean, they were just around basically to get killed and to fight, but it was a really, really cool scene. All right, and also Dogpool. I got to mention Dogpool, right? Oh my goodness, Dogpool should be listed as one of the top stars. In fact, maybe Oscar-worthy. Maybe an Oscar-worthy performance with that tongue. Oh, love Dogpool. So now it's up to Wolverine and Deadpool to basically do the impossible. They have to destroy this machine and stop Cassandra from, wiping out all of reality. And the reason I say it's impossible is, well, Paradox explains it. This is matter and antimatter. They do not play nicely with each other. When they mix, your bodies will be atomized. If you don't trust me, trust the laws of physics. Even if you live long enough to make the circuit and basically destroy the machine, you will die down there. So they're still willing to do it. And from a storyline standpoint, it's very important because we needed to get Hugh Jackman's shirt off, right? Oh my goodness, that dude is in his 50s and looks so good. How is it possible? How is it possible? That's amazing. But anyway, the real question is, how do they manage to survive this? I mean, it kind of reminded me of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 when they all held hands and managed to defeat Ronan, but they were holding basically a Power Stone. Of course, we later learn that's because Peter is half celestial. So that was how they survived. The question is, how do Deadpool and Wolverine survive? Well, we're going to get some hints. So let's look and see what we can learn here. So first, we have Peter showing up, which is awesome. He's Peter Pool, one of the Deadpool core. But B-15 says we need to get this Deadpool variant, referring to our main Deadpool, back to the Void. And thank goodness Peter says, actually, this one's homegrown. He belongs here with me. So there's some really funny scenes between B-15 and Peter, where it looks like they may be starting a relationship together. There's something's cooking between those two. But B-15 then turns to Logan and says, well, you shouldn't even be near this timeline. And of course, she's saying that because I think there's already a Logan there. So crazy. But anyway, she says, I want to show you something huge. Your universe is regenerating. Whatever you did, you not only saved your world, you spared your timeline from extinction. So I think what's being hinted at here is the only reason they were able to survive is that the new Wolverine, not the one here, but the new Wolverine that Deadpool brought in is now the new anchor for the universe. That through that metaphysics of whatever was happening there with the matter and the antimatter, as they rewrote reality, he became the new anchor. And that's what spared the timeline from extinction. Very interesting. So do we have two anchors then? Is this poor guy on the left here no longer the anchor? Oh, these timelines, so confusing. But anyway, then, hey, what about these guys, right? So Deadpool says, well, we could not have made it out of the Void without some help from some people the world kind of forgot. Is there any way you can find a way to bring them home? So I think one of the big hints on whether or not at least three of these guys are from the main timeline or not is we don't see them again. We don't see Gambit, Blade, or Elektra again. We do see X-23 on the far left there. We do see her in the final scenes. So are they from a different universe altogether, or are they just from a different timeline in 10,005? I'm wondering if they're going to tell us eventually. I'm going to tell you my gut feeling is they're from a totally different universe. Because, I mean, Blade is not even from Fox, wasn't even made by Fox. Elektra was made by Fox, and Gambit, of course, never was made, but would have been in the X-Men movies. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think they're from a different universe or from a branch off of 10,005? Okay, so then Wolverine and Deadpool head back to Blind Owl's. We have company. And this is what I thought was really cool about this movie. There had been discussions that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was one of the Sean Levy's favorite movies. If you've never seen it, you have to see it. But basically, it was these two completely different personalities stuck together for the entire movie, and learning to accept each other in the end. But here's the real key. John Candy, the one on the right there, didn't have a home, didn't have anywhere to go at the end, and would have been spending Thanksgiving all alone. And Steve Martin finally invites him home. That's kind of what happened here with Logan. I mean, Logan's now in this new timeline. He doesn't even belong there, doesn't know a single person. And so Deadpool brings him home to be with Blind Owl. I thought that was so cool. So yeah, there are other parallels to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but I really got the feels in this particular scene. Very cool. So did this movie set up future storylines? I mean, we saw briefly in the movie and also in the trailers this Secret Wars comic in the Void, which certainly implied the Void might become Battleworld. So in a way, they kind of set things up with that, I guess. And then there's this anchor being concept. If it's real, let me know your thoughts on that. If it's real, then maybe that is somehow setting up things. But I think the biggest setup the movie really did is I think we are tied to this universe. I've suggested this in some earlier videos, but I think the Marvel's post-credit scene with the Beast is Universe 10,005, and in particular is Deadpool's timeline. Because if you think about it, in Days of Future Past, everybody came back, right? They all came back, and the same actor, Kelsey Grammer, played Beast, and they look very, very similar. Also, in the Marvel's post-credit scene, Charles asked for an update. You know, your first thought is, well, he's dead, right? No, remember, he came back at the end of Days of Future Past. Now, of course, he dies in 2029, but we're in 2024. Oh, these timelines. Ouch, my head. So I really do think they're setting up a situation where Monica is going to end up creating an incursion in what is effectively Deadpool's universe, and they're going to have to send her home, but it's going to lead to an Avengers versus X-Men fight because the X-Men universe, 10,005, wants to protect themselves from this ever happening again. So they're going to be mad at 616 for Monica ending up in their universe and almost creating an incursion. Let me know your thoughts on that, but I am really betting that Avengers 5, which was going to be the Kang Dynasty, is going to be renamed Avengers vs. X-Men, and I am all for it. That would be so, so cool. And all the characters are there. They have them all. And maybe it's a way to even bring back Blade and Elektra, for that matter. Who knows? But anyway, we should find out soon, because I'm betting today at SDCC they will talk about it, and I really hope they announce it. All right, so did we ever learn where Deadpool's universe is located? You know my theories. I really think that there are separate multiversal trees, if you will. So in other words, trees across the universe, or maybe I shouldn't even say tree, since the X-Men universe looks like that. So whatever you want to call that, briar patch, I don't know. But I really do think that they are separate. I think they give us a lot of hints. I think the Time Ripper makes more sense ripping this thing instead of ripping just a branch off of 616. The fact they're calling it 10,005 and giving it a separate designation, just like they did with 838. I think those are a lot of clues. Plus, they told us essentially there's only one TVA now. So I think, because I've been asked this by a lot of folks, I think the TVA has now set up different departments, like paradoxes, to monitor each of these universes to make sure no new Kangs spring up. Because if you think about it, at the end of Loki Season 2, they were monitoring just the 616 tree. Well, you could have Kangs at any of these multiverses. So I think the TVA is monitoring each of these, and they've set up different departments to do it. I think there's only one void, and that's why we saw, stuff from the X-Men universe going there, but also from the MCU. And then ultimately that will be Battleworld. I think there's only one quantum realm, may not come into play again. We may never see the quantum realm again, to be honest. But I do think there's only one quantum realm. And then somewhere, hidden away, is that Kang Council. Now, I'm guessing like in some pocket universe or somewhere outside of space and time, undetectable. Now, maybe we'll never see them again. But I hope that Feige does answer the question, what happened to them? If he wants to write them off and we don't have a Kang Dynasty anymore, that's fine. But what happened to them? But anyway, this is what I think the multiversal model looks like. So I think it's worth reiterating just a couple key points on why I think we do have those separate trees. So in the assembled episode for Multiverse of Madness, which is an official Disney Plus, special. So I would think this is what they want us to understand. Michael Waldron said it's impossible, near impossible, to travel from one universe to another. In Loki, you can kind of hop from one timeline branch to another, but you got to be anchored to some original timeline. Anchored like a branch on a tree, right? But what America can do is she can jump from one universe to another, which implies they're not anchored to each other, and she can literally do the impossible. Also, Bo DeMaio, I've mentioned these tweets before, but somebody said, hey, X-Men 97 and the MCU, how are they related? And he says, well, they're not necessarily connected on the same tree, but he was told, in my discussions, we were to view it as neighboring trees, not a branch of the multiverse MCU tree. So he's basically saying the MCU multiverse tree is one thing, and then there are other neighboring trees. I just really, really think that's the structure. I don't otherwise know how you have incursions. Incursions are happening between two different universes that are not connected to each other. This is from Quantum Mania, when Kang showed us how we get incursions. And of course, Reed Richards said, your arrival here confuses and destabilizes reality, and the larger the footprint you leave behind, the greater the risk of an incursion. So visiting another universe and staying there too long, hello Monica in the Marvels, that can create an incursion, but there has to be some reason. It can't just be the branches in the tree, because we saw them jump between different branches and What If all the time. They move between those branches like it's nothing. So there has to be something special about moving to an 838 and coming back again. And in fact, we saw it's very difficult to even get to the Marvels. Remember, they had to rip a hole in space-time, and we even saw a black hole before finally you could get to a reality parallel to your own, as the Beast said. So I just really think it all fits. And eventually, this universe, I really think Beast is in that universe, they're going to collide. So I've shown this multiversal model before. On the top is all the different separate universes. In the middle is the Loki show, and then ultimately the Void. And on the bottom is the MCU. Well, I think the Deadpool and Wolverine universe and the Marvels are the same universe, and that they're going to collide with the MCU, essentially. And that that's going to be the next big movie. That Avengers versus X-Men, as well as, notice, Fantastic Four. So more and more is going to be revealed. I wish this movie, I'll be honest, I wish this movie had been more clear on the multiversal model and answered some of our questions, but I do think this is what we're gearing towards. So let me know your thoughts. Are you convinced this model works? Are you still on the fence? Or do you think it's wrong? I want to hear all your opinions. You know I look at all the different comments and respond to each. So, last thing I'll say is this was truly a love letter to the fans. I enjoyed every minute of it. The cameos, the Easter eggs, obviously Ryan and Hugh in the same movie together. Their chemistry was fantastic. Just an incredible movie. Let me know your thoughts. How did you feel about the movie? Was it everything you wanted? Was it missing things? Would you have changed anything? But overall, how did you feel about the movie? I absolutely loved it. Okay, remember, July contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. And of course, we have the membership option in case you're interested in that. And then I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are talking about, well, Deadpool and Wolverine. We have a special section for spoilers. We always do that for anything that comes out. There are 1,500 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and we would like for you to be a part of them. I will leave a pinned comment so that you can join the server. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.